Colorado quarterback Shedeur Sanders is one of the most polarizing players in the NFL draft. We'll discuss his dynasty value next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Magdziuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Magdziuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Magdziuk. And it's a Wednesday show, so of course, Matt Williamson is here. Follow him on Twitter at Williamson NFL. We've got a busy show for you guys today. We're going to talk about who is the actual RB2 in this draft class. We're going to discuss Jaylen Waddle's dynasty value later. But, Matt, I wanted to start with Shedeur Sanders because he's been just the talk of the league over the last 3 months. And now we're starting to see more mock drafts where he's falling not only outside of the top 5, but even potentially outside the top 20. Where do you stand with Shedeur Sanders and his dynasty value?
It's a tough one because it is the heart of lying season, and I don't think Sanders is going to go 2 or 3 as we thought possible a month ago or so. And I think Dion and the whole camp have kind of made that clear where they're very selective with where they spent their time and visits and things like that early on. Now, he was in Pittsburgh 2 days ago and they picked 21. Like, who wants to have me for a visit? I'll come visit anybody. I think that they're concerned, and the writing on the wall is some teams, maybe a lot of teams, don't have him quarterback 2 or maybe even quarterback 3. Milroe, Dart. I mean, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and all these guys are very different. And I don't think he stands out from that group at all. I like him. I just don't think his ceiling's very high. I mean, of course, I get asked about him for the Steelers all the time. And I would aim higher if I were the Steelers with a Milroe or someone like that. I think Geno Smith, this version of Geno Smith is probably the fantasy and real world ceiling for Shedeur if he hits it. And I don't think that's wonderful, but hey, super flex, he'll probably be a 10-year starter for us,
Kate, how do you feel about Shedeur with just a week to go?
I am cooling. So here's the thing. If he gets the top 5 draft capital, which again, we're not really expecting that at this point, but if he did, then we know the runway can be rather lengthy for players, with that kind of draft investment. You get your chances, and then maybe you get a few more chances, and then a few more chances after that, because everybody wants to see, okay, well, you didn't hit with the first team. Maybe you didn't hit with the second team. Maybe I can fix him, right? That's the pathway for top 5 picks. Once you're outside of, the top 20, do you still have that kind of runway? Because
Kate, I got the data right here. So since 2019, we've only had 4 quarterbacks drafted from picks 16 to 50. That's a pretty big gap, right? Wow. Yeah. Second half of the first round and the top half of round 2.
The second round quarterback is almost dead. It's weird.
Yeah, but I wonder if we're going to see it kind of come back this year. But here are those quarterbacks. Maybe. Will Levis, 2023, 33rd overall pick, benched by the end of year 2. Kenny Pickett, pick 20 in 2022, benched by the end of, not even the end, halfway through.
On his third team. Right.
On his third team already. Drew Lock was picked 42 in 2019, and he's been on how many different teams at this point? And the only one that's worked is Jordan Love, who was picked at 26 in 2020, and he had to sit for 3 years. So we just don't see those quarterbacks get a very long leash at all. I do think Shedeur is better than Pickett and Locke and Levis. But what's the upside here?
Also, what's the bar you're setting, Marcus? Like, when you say Shedeur is better than those quarterbacks, okay. Like, the bar, you set the bar so astronomically low. And I get that those are just the quarterbacks in the range that you can compare them to, but like, good God.
And I think you're also saying he's better than the draftable version of those guys too.
Yes, but at the same time, it's like
before they hit the league.
If you're being drafted in that range, teams just aren't going to wait around forever. And I think that's the key part here. Like if Shedeur ends up going 25 and he's not great 2 years in, that's not going to prohibit any team from drafting a quarterback in 2027.
I also think the question here is, what is Shedeur Sanders' ceiling for fantasy? Because I think it's much lower than anybody's really giving credit. Like there are very few pure pocket passers in this league that are truly good enough and productive enough and efficient enough as pocket passers to make a big dent in fantasy, right? Like
he's not going to be Joe Burrow.
He's not
No.
going to be Joe Burrow. So
Right.
if you're not Joe Burrow, then what are you? Maybe Derek Carr. Like we talked about this on the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast with my wonderful wife, Michelle, over on Locked On Fantasy. Go listen on Tuesday show. We were talking about like, okay, the Saints, if they go Shedeur Sanders at 9, what does that mean? I don't know. The ceiling's probably exactly the same. I think for a Derek Carr versus a Shedeur Sanders in terms of like the upside of the receivers, right? Like
Yep.
they're both pretty accurate pocket passers who don't add much on the ground with their legs, but like I don't get the upside. So like if somebody else is willing to bite on a Shedeur Sanders in my rookie drafts, I'm just going to go with like Jalen Milroe. I don't think the floor is anything with Jalen Milroe or even a Jackson Dart. But isn't the upside just significantly higher that like, why aren't I just going to take a swing on one of those guys?
Matt, I looked at the rushing stats of the quarterbacks coming into this class. And again, you need to remember that sacks count towards rushing yards in college. So
Right.
Having
he takes
said
a lot
that,
of them. Yeah.
he takes a lot of them. Do you want to guess how many rushing yards Shedeur Sanders had in 4 years in college? Just give me a guess.
At 2 different schools, probably started 40 games. Maybe
50
more
games.
than that.
50
games.
50,
Okay.
Yeah, 50 starts.
500.
29. 20.
Oh my God.
Now
The sacks
again,
are a big part, but wow.
The sacks are a big part. But compare
But to be
that
clear,
it's
sacks
probably not
count
even
against all
500.
college quarterbacks.
Right,
Like,
right.
so
Jalen Milroe was also sacked a bunch in college, right?
Yeah.
Jalen
He
Milroe
has more
had
than 29.
1,500 rushing yards and 33 touchdowns just as a runner. And this is where I keep coming back to these super flex drafts is right now, based on our Dynasty League football ADP, Shedeur is going at 7th overall at QB2, and you can get Jalen Milroe 19th overall at QB4. And Matt, I'm honestly starting to wonder, like, will they even be drafted 15 spots from one another in the actual NFL draft? Because I could see Milroe going at like 34 and Shedeur going at 20.
So
21.
I always bring things back to the Steelers, of course, but like Steeler Nation thinks I'm insane that for Pittsburgh, if I had to take one of the two at 21, I've said on the air 1,000 times, I would take Milroe. For the Steelers, assuming Rodgers is there, let Milroe Lamar it for his first year, and maybe you found your guy. People think I'm insane, but I think you could probably make the case for other teams as well. Would Cleveland be in the same boat? Would the Giants be in the same boat? If you look through those lenses, as specifically as I do the Steelers, especially with Wilson and Winston and Pickett and Flacco on board, I don't need Sanders to start day one. I'm probably not winning the Super Bowl this year anyways if I'm those teams. And then Kate, Marcus and I were talking before we hit record. I don't love Sanders, and neither does Marcus, not to speak for him, in the Cleveland weather, in the AFC North. Like in a dome in New Orleans sounds great, but they're not exactly the most functional organization in the league either.
So, Kate and Matt, I'm going to assume for both of you that 7th overall is way too high for Shedeur Sanders, and probably you're just going to avoid him entirely in the first round of our rookie drafts and just pick somebody else, take a running back, take a receiver. Is that fair, Kate?
yes, even in a super flex draft,
Okay.
I'm not looking at Shedeur Sanders in round 1. The upside's just not there for me in that evaluation.
Matt?
100%. But super quick question for you guys. If you had to take Sanders or Dart today, not knowing landing spot, do you have a preference?
Sanders. I just think Sanders.
I think he's a better football player.
Yeah. And that
better chance to be a starter.
Correct. He's got a better chance to be somebody that you can actually play, where I wonder if Dart 2 years from now, he's the Drew Lock or the
Levis
Levis,
right,
where it's
yeah.
like, okay, yeah. All right, let's
He does
talk
run,
about.
though.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about the RB2 in this class. We've got Ashton Genty, who's going to be the 101 in every single rookie draft. But what about after him? Is it Omarion Hampton or maybe somebody else? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. As a small business owner, your work doesn't stop when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. And that is where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip: add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. It's no wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn has helped them find high quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Matt, I wanted to ask you about RB2 in this class because for a long time, it's been Omarion Hampton. And we've seen mocks where Hampton's going inside the top 12, sometimes even the top 10. But over on Dynasty League Football, we've seen the ADPs between Omarion Hampton and TreVeyon Henderson the gap has started to close a little bit. Who do you want as RB2 from this class? Or is it as simple as I want to wait and see what the landing spot looks like?
I still want Hampton. And in a non-super flex, a normal league, I think he's my second rookie still, too. I don't have a lot of faith in Tet. I don't think Golden translates to fantasy super great. He's still my running back, too. I'm taking him ahead of the tight ends. So I still have faith in Hampton. I don't feel like he did anything wrong. I understand there's an infatuation with Henderson, and the league wants explosives on the ground. If you're going to play too high, I need to get my explosives on the ground. The Eagles are the best example. But I think they both provide that. Henderson's more explosive. He's about the only back in this draft that pass protects at all. And I think that's, something that's really appealing for year one with him. But in the end, I think it's Genty at 6, Hampton with the Bears, Henderson with the Broncos, or something like that, I still think Hampton goes ahead of him.
I'm still fully on board with Omarion Hampton. So here's the thing. I understand like the infatuation aspect with TreVeyon Henderson. He's an explosive athlete. He adds a lot of just juice to the field. But I mean, they are very different players. And one of the biggest differentiators, I think, between Omarion Hampton, like play style aside, the difference is Omarion Hampton, I think, has a shot to be a 20-plus touch per game kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see that same upside with TreVeyon Henderson just based on injury history and his play style. I think he's more of this guy that, you're probably going to generate like 14 touches per game. They're going to be efficient ones, but you want to keep him fresh and you want to maybe limit some of those extra touches for a guy that's already had a decent injury history. So I think like if you're looking for a tiebreaker between these two, I think projection of their workload is a really good way to break that tie. And I don't think there's anybody in the world who would say that they can realistically project Omarion Hampton to have a smaller workload than TreVeyon Henderson, period.
Right.
No, I don't see that either. However, I think Henderson's just a better actual NFL player. And I'm really curious to see the landing spot, Matt, because I've been looking at mock drafts all morning. And I saw a mock today where Hampton went to the Broncos at 20, but Henderson went at 17 to the Bengals. And he's playing with Joe Burrow. Obviously, you've got that Ohio connection. He was a local visit. He is somebody that you mentioned the pass blocking. Like, yeah, you're not getting an offensive lineman, but you're getting another guy that can stay in and help Joe Burrow.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any chance that the landing spot does end up flipping these players in your rankings for you?
I have a hard time envisioning it. I also have a hard time envisioning the Bengals trying to win games 52-50 by drafting Henderson in the first round instead of something on defense. I don't know. I mean, I guess Denver would be really appealing. I mean, I do trust
For Henderson or for
Hayden.
Hampton?
Both, but
Oh.
Henderson in general. I mean, if he landed there, I'd be pretty happy if I had pre-drafted him or whatever. You know, I have a really hard time because it goes back to what Kate said. I just think Hampton's going to get more touches in 2025, probably 2026. You
Sure.
know, I mean, yeah.
Can I make the argument that I kind of don't want Hampton and Henderson to go to the Broncos because Sean Payton is notorious for using 3, sometimes 4 different running
That's
backs.
the point.
And while
But
I
they're
think
productive, Marcus. They're productive.
they
catch
have
the
been
ball.
productive, but I do think the ceiling is a little bit limited, right? Because they have so many different running backs. And I think like Hampton could go to Denver and get 16, 17, 18 touches a game, but maybe he's not being fully utilized the way that he would be if he got drafted by the Bears at 10
Let's say the Bears is what we want, maybe.
or Dallas. I mean, I don't want the
Yeah,
Cowboys
yeah.
to draft Hampton at 12, but I
It'd be
think
great
Dallas
for
is a better
fantasy.
situation than Denver at 20.
What about a sneaky one would be like, what if the Chiefs grab Henderson? I know that like Vegas is telling us he'll be gone by then, which shocks me. But I mean, everyone seems to think he won't get out of round 1. But could he land in like Kansas City or some really good spot?
What about Houston? I think Houston
That's
needs to
not
miss their
bad. Yeah,
offensive
right.
line, but I mean, they've got Joe
They have a
Mixon.
lot of picks. Yeah.
That's basically it. I could see them wanting to add Henderson, who played with Stroud at Ohio State, and just, hey, let's get more explosive on offense.
The Steelers have also had Hampton and Henderson in the building. That would be a terrible landing spot.
You think it would or wouldn't be a terrible?
I don't think it'd be terrible. I think
it'd be good. Honestly,
Yeah.
because
Hampton would go right past Warren.
Arthur Smith has done a really good job of getting these guys lots of touches, whether it was at Atlanta or back in Tennessee. I actually think that at worst, it's a neutral landing spot at worst.
I don't know that Warren will be back a year from now either.
Right. So that's why I wouldn't stress about it too much. So we'll see how these guys end up shaking out and where their dynasty values land. But right now, just to recap, Omarion Hampton is RB2, 3rd overall in Superflex drafts. Travion Henderson, RB3, 5th overall. But the gap between those two players in terms of their actual ADP, 3.2, 4.9, I wouldn't be shocked to see them flip once we get to the draft or after the draft.
And if that's the case, Marcus, I'm going to be very happy because I want more Omarion Hampton in my life.
There you go. And this is a good chance to maybe buy low after the draft. If Henderson,
maybe Henderson will be my 3rd rookie. I mean, the more I think through it, I just didn't say anything great about the wide receivers. I mean, doesn't change Hampton's view in my mind, but maybe if you're picking right now, I'd take Henderson at 3.
Let me ask you this. We'll get sidetracked for a second.
That's all right.
I've been of the belief that Travis Hunter is somebody that I want to take inside the top 5 because I think he's just such a special player. And it sure seems like, Matt, he's going to the Browns at 2. And Andrew Berry, the Browns GM, has said they view him as a wide receiver first. Where are you putting
2?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's as special as they could be.
Right.
If he's going to be a receiver first, I don't care if he's with the Patriots, wherever, he's 2.
Right. Yeah. So how do we value Travis Hunter?
I think we don't value him enough, and we should value him like he's Jamar Chase almost. You know what I mean? Like, I think he's so awesome. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll say, so I did a rookie mock draft with the PFF Fantasy Podcast on Tuesday, dropped here on Wednesday. Go check that out. But I was a little bullish on Travis Hunter. I think I took him in a single quarterback rookie mock. I took him, I think, either at 6 or 7. And the consensus in the room was that was far too bullish, which
his ADP is 9 in Superflex drafts right now.
Oh,
but this is non-Superflex. So like, I thought that was a pretty fair point, but it was interesting. And maybe the folks that I was mock drafting with are just more risk averse, but like I said, out of any receiver in this class, if I told you one of them was going to be a top 10 dynasty asset by consensus in 2026, who would it be?
Hunter.
Yeah.
Easily.
If I told you one's going to the Hall of Fame,
Hunter. Like, and that's why I think he's worth the swing.
I saw Nate Tice from Yahoo Sports compare him to Chad Johnson, which I think is a really interesting style comp because he's kind of skinny like that, but he's tall and he's so quick. I think he's got even better ball skills than what Chad Johnson had. So I am very bullish on Travis Hunter. Matt, it sounds like you are as well.
I urge people to go listen to Reception Perception, Matt Harmon's take on Hunter, and basically says, this might be the best receiver I've ever tracked.
Yeah, and he even admitted, like, he doesn't even know what he's doing running your routes yet, right? Like,
exactly.
He doesn't know how to do it yet, and he's still this dominant. So, yes, go draft Travis Hunter way, way above consensus ADP. All right, let's talk about a veteran who could potentially gain a ton of dynasty value in the next week. Let's talk about Jaylen Waddle next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love the NBA playoffs, and I love FanDuel because they make it so easy to bet on your favorite teams or your favorite player props, from three-pointers to steals to assists. FanDuel has so many ways to bet on your favorite players. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine your live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Nobody else is doing that right now. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft Show with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Now that the season is over, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day, and find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, Matt, I wanted to ask you about a veteran receiver, and it's Jaylen Waddle, because Tyreek Hill has been in the news over the last few weeks. Generally, it's not for anything good. And it seems like this situation is getting to a point where he could be traded. We remember after week 18 last year, he said that he wanted out. There were some trade requests that were rescinded. It feels like this situation is very touch and go. So is now the time to buy Jaylen Waddle?
I think it's a great conversation, because I think we have to start with the state of the Miami Dolphin franchise. Is they were very aggressive and pushed their chips in the middle to try to win now with the Tyreek Hill trade, signing of Ramsey, 2 on a rookie deal. Let's win now. We have this really innovative offense. And frankly, I think there are really rough waters ahead now, because they didn't win now, and Ramsey once traded, Armstead's retiring. It was a fragile build to begin with. We know that.
Who is injury history, right?
Injury history, age, not really building in the trenches, relying on scheme and speed, and, winning late in the season when the weather hits and playoffs. So it didn't work. And I think that the franchise is in for some tough times with Tua on a big contract, Ramsey getting out, Armstead getting out, maybe Tyreek getting out. But Waddle's stock's a little down because he's been nicked up, and really nothing that he's done wrong. And I think Miami is not in really the situation of power anymore, that they're probably going to have to live with the Malik Washingtons, who I think they like. And I know it's minor, but Westbrook Akine is a serviceable player that you can trot out there. So I think Waddle and Jonnu, I think we need to lump him in there a little bit, are definite buys, because they're still going to play their same system. Now, I guess my only question for you, and Marcus, you always seem tuned into this, but would Tyreek's legal issues right now prohibit him from getting traded, or muck up the waters? Okay.
No, from everything I've read, it doesn't seem like that's going to be an issue. Now, there is a chance that Miami might be able to void some of the guaranteed money, which makes him even more tradable.
More tradable, yeah.
But I think it's to the point, like, if Miami just wants to be done with him, they'll figure out a way to move on, right?
Okay. So a little over a week from now, he might be gone.
And if it's not this week, I wouldn't be surprised if it's before week 1. There just might be a point where it's like, hey, we need to reset the culture here, and moving on from some personalities, right? Like Jalen Ramsey and Tyreek Hill. While those guys are still awesome players, maybe they feel like, hey, it's time to change things up. We should mention Jaylen Waddle, only 26 years old, being drafted as wide receiver 23. Kate, are you buying?
I think at these prices I am. And I do think like not just because of the potential Tyreek Hill news. I just think in general, we're looking at a player that I think has a pretty high ceiling who's coming off a pretty abysmal season. Posted career lows, yards per route run, yards after the catch per reception, passer rating when targeted. Like this was not a great season for Jaylen Waddle. Wasn't targeted at a high rate. Saw a dip in his yards per reception average, only scored 2 touchdowns. Like this feels like a decent buy low window in general for a player that we know like there are a lot of peaks and valleys with Jaylen Waddle, but if I'm valuing him basically as like a wide receiver 3, I'm not necessarily looking for him to be the core of my wide receiver group in my fantasy lineup. He becomes more of one of these like a high-end flex play any given week. And if you're telling me that the ceiling of that player that I'm going to maybe put in my flex any given week is as high as I think Jaylen Waddle's is, that becomes a lot more palatable for me. And I think he becomes a buy.
I want to run through a couple trades really quickly and get your guys' thoughts. Jaylen Waddle for Tyreek Hill, straight up.
Waddle.
Okay, I agree. That one seems really easy. How about Jaylen Waddle for pick 112?
Waddle.
Yeah, I'll take Waddle.
I was going to say Waddle or Golden.
Waddle.
Waddle.
Fairly easily.
Yeah, Waddle.
Yeah.
Waddle baby. Yeah.
Jaylen Waddle or Chris Olave, 2 receivers with injury histories from that. I guess they're different drafts, but 2 younger receivers with injury histories.
Jaylen Waddle.
Close, but Olave.
I take Olave as well.
Real close. Yeah.
Jaylen Waddle. These are all trades that have happened over the last month. Jaylen Waddle or Terry McLaurin.
That might be what's my team look like. I bet I would take McLaurin higher in redraft this year.
I would take McLaurin higher in redraft. I think I would take Waddle in Dynasty.
Yeah, I get it.
I tend to agree.
All right, last one. Ricky Pearsall and pick 202 for Jaylen Waddle. 202, you're looking at like maybe Colston Loveland in that range. Matthew Golden is in that range right now.
Probably a pretty decent back.
Cam Scatabo, maybe. Kate?
I guess Waddle.
I think it just depends on your evaluation of Ricky Pearsall. And if you're feeling good about Ricky Pearsall, I'm not. So I'll take Jaylen Waddle.
I'm not a big Ricky Pearsall fan. So I think I would lean with the talent and Jaylen Waddle. So maybe right now is a good time to buy Waddle. His value is suppressed, but don't be surprised if we get some movement with a potential Tyreek Hill trade over the next week, maybe over the next couple months.
What's the earliest pick you trade him straight up for? You'd acquire Waddle. Would you give 1.6? Would you give 1.5? 1.4?
No,
okay.
No, I think we're talking about after the top 10.
Okay.
And I also think it depends on like, I'm going to be honest. If I'm trading a pick straight up for Jaylen Waddle, this is going to be a situation where I do it in the middle of my draft and see how the board plays out. Like if the top end running backs are off the board and I'm left with a Matthew Golden, for instance, and that's kind of my decision and that's where I'm at, then yeah, I'm going to go with a Jaylen Waddle. But I don't think with this draft class in particular, and maybe we'll see some sort of settling of, average draft position, etc. But I do think that this class is one that is very non-consensus. Like you will see a lot of very far-ranging opinions. So like, I kind of want to see how the board plays out before I make any assumption of who's going to be available at any point.
Matt, someone might fall to you that you didn't see coming.
Yeah.
Right. Matt, before we go, stack these 3 receivers before the draft. Jaylen Waddle, Emeka Egbuka, and Luther Burden.
I think Waddle's 1. Burden, Egbuka. But they're not far off, know.
So those would be the picks that you're trading for Waddle. Probably, picks 9, 10, 11, 12, where those receivers go. And if you want to just get a more proven guy on an offense that we still think should be pretty good, it's maybe not a bad play here.
I bet there's a lot of Waddle owners that would listen to offers right now.
100%.
Oh, yeah.
All right, that is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcast. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Matt on Twitter at Williamson NFL. You can follow Kate at Kate Magdziuk. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.